Hello, listeners. Welcome to this special edition of the ENSign podcast, marking this year's edition of the Legal 500 GC Power List for Ghana. The Power List recognizes some of the most outstanding General Counsel in the country, lawyers who are not only technically strong, but also trusted advisors at the highest levels of business. I am David Asiedu, a partner in the Commercial Disputes Resolution Team in the Ghana office of ENS. The role of a General Counsel and senior in-house has evolved significantly. It's about far more than heading the legal department or having a boatload of technical legal experience. They sit at the center of strategy, risk, governance, and reputation. They help to shape major commercial decisions, manage crises, and often serve as a sounding board to the CEO and the board. In this episode, we move beyond technicalities to explore what the role truly involves, the pressures, the judgment calls, and the leadership required to operate at that level. I'm delighted to be joined by two exceptional General Counsel. They were both recognized in the 2025 Legal 500 Power List, and I look forward to our conversation. Our first guest is Nana Kofi Asare. Nana Kofi serves as the head of legal and regulatory affairs at MTN Ghana, where he leads the legal function and helps to shape regulatory strategy for the largest telecoms and digital services company in Ghana, no doubt. He brings broad experience across commercial and corporate law and works closely with business leaders to manage legal risk while supporting growth and innovation in a fast-moving sector. His role sits at the intersection between technology, regulation, and customer experience. As I stated, he's been recognized in the Legal 500 GC Power List 2025, which reflects his leadership as a trusted legal advisor within a highly regulated and dynamic industry. Nana Kofi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Our second guest is Abena Aboagyewaah Owusu. Abena is a senior legal executive with over 18 years experience advising on energy, infrastructure, and corporate legal affairs. She currently serves as a legal affairs manager at ENI Ghana, where she heads the legal function for upstream operations. Her work focuses on high-value petroleum agreements, regulatory compliance, and cross-border disputes, and she plays a central role in shaping the company's legal strategy for complex oil and gas projects. She also works closely with the global legal teams in Europe, aligning local operations with international standards. Abena holds an LLM in oil and gas and is a member of the Ghana Bar Association. Her recognition in the Legal 500 GC Power List 2025 reflects her steady leadership in navigating complex legal and regulatory environments within the energy sector. Abena, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Okay, let's kick it off. Maybe I should start with something not related to the main discussion. So Nana Kofi, I've known you for quite a while, and everybody I knew you along with thought that you'd find your way into professional basketball or something. How did you lose your way into law?
Thank you, David. Oh, in the short answer, I didn't end up in the United States. Like after school in Ghana, I went to school in the UK. Yes. So obviously I went to uni in UK, joined the basketball team, and my first day at practice, I think I expected to see like in the US, with the cheerleaders and everything. There was nothing. So I think that's when I realized that I might have to choose a different career path because it wasn't going to happen in the US. in the UK. But I mean, I still follow basketball. I don't play as much as I used to. I kind of slowed down after joining COVID. So then I started playing less and less, but I still play in my mind. So I become more like an armchair player now. Yeah. But I never know. Maybe my second wind, I might go back to the NBA.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
Abena, I have heard on the grapevine that you're an ardent follower of the Premier League. What team do you support and how are they doing right now? If they aren't Manchester United, that's unfortunate.
David, you're right. I love everything about Manchester United. I followed them for years. So you can imagine my pain when the team was, not doing so well. I was teased a lot by a lot of friends, and every
Mm.
time the team was playing and they get a goal against them, people will call me, send me a message. How are you feeling today? And I know where they're going with that. But and I grew up with only boys. I have my siblings are all boys, so I had nothing to do but to follow them anytime they were going to watch football. So I ended up doing a lot of the things they do, and that's where my passion for football started.
And
So
Manchester
yes,
United,
Manchester
obviously.
United is it.
Yeah.
Yes, and you asked how they're faring now. I think that they were supposed to win the last match with West Ham, but I don't know what happened. We'll take the draw and hope for the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks twice for playing along and for liking Manchester United. To the real questions now. Nana Kofi, let me go with you first. So what's the biggest misconception people have about being a general counsel in a company, and what does the role actually look like in practice?
Oh, I think the biggest misconception is that you make a lot of money. That is, but when you are in-house, I mean, you realize that legal, regulatory, you are a support function, and then you really get to understand what support function means. So I think that is just the biggest misconception that you make almost as much money as a CEO. Yeah, so I just want to say no, that isn't actually the case. But in terms of what the role really entails,
Yeah.
it's a lot of, I mean, it's like high intensity depending on the industry you are in. You always have to basically be on top of the game. You have to work with different stakeholders. In my case, I'm in the telecoms industry, and we're in a market where it started from I think it's about 10 years ago, there were like 6 players in the industry, and now there's just 2 players. So basically, we are like we've basically been declared dominant by the regulator. And obviously,
Yeah.
apart from the telecom space, there's the mobile money business as well, which is the same. And on top of all of that, we are a listed company. So basically, anything and everything we do, we are always under the spotlight. So it basically means you always have to be on top of your game. And like I keep telling people now, the role is becoming more and more about stakeholder management. You cannot be general counsel and not have good people skills, because you have to manage internal stakeholders who want contracts out as quickly as possible. You have to manage execs and tell them that what we are trying to do, it might, raise an issue with the regulator. I mean, obviously, commercial people have targets. All they want to do is revenue. So, and legal is generally seen as no people. So it's just a matter of getting them to understand that you are saying yes, but with advice along the way. So I think that's what I would have to say. It's basically what the role involves. You have to keep educating yourself, because sometimes what happens is when you're in-house, you cannot, if you're not careful, you lose touch with what's happening in the legal field, because you get so boggled down on what you are doing internally. So you don't get
Yeah.
a chance to go for maybe conferences and stuff to sharpen your skills. So that is where it's on you to basically make sure you keep upgrading yourself. So I think that's what I would like to start up with about what the role is like in-house. Yeah.
That's great. What I'm hearing you to be saying is it's one title, but it's actually so many different roles, both legal and commercial, put into one. And Abena, can I throw the same question your way? What's the biggest misconception you think people have about being a general legal counsel, and what does it really look like in practice?
Well, thank you, David, for the question. So I work in the upstream oil and gas business. So I'll speak from that perspective. So for me, the
Great.
biggest conception is that a general counsel is mainly only a lawyer who drafts or review contracts and interprets statutes.
Yes.
That's all. In practice, especially in capital intensive and state regulated industries like the energy sector, the job is very strategic. You are embedded in investment decisions, government regulation, government relations, JV dynamics, and you must be concerned with long-term license security. So to this end, the real work is not just asking, is this legal, but is it defensible? Is it profitable? Is it
Yeah.
sustainable over time? So it is not business as usual. Reviewing and drafting contracts, no, that's not just it. The legal function in practical terms test your stress level, I must say. You come under immense pressure, and if you're risk averse, you cannot do the job. So, for example, what happens if production underperforms or if fiscal terms shift? If there are disputes between the states, the question is simply not how do you win, but you have to find a way to protect the company's position without damaging the operating environment and the relationship you have with stakeholders.
Relationship. Yes.
Yes. So at senior level, the role is less about drafting precision as one may think, but it is more about, blending in to support the business. So you're not just a top lawyer in the company, you're also part of management. So you manage risk and you take decision on the same level as all the other managers in the team. So that's basically what I would say.
Great. So from what you've said and from what Nana Kofi said to you, you guys are just juggling maybe, I don't know, 10 balls in the air at any point in time, struggling not to trying not to drop any. My next question is to Nana Kofi. How would you describe the role of a general counsel today as compared to, say, 5 years ago? What's changed? Has it become more operational, strategic, risk-centric, or something else?
Thank you, David, for the question. And again, I think coming from my field, I think the difference is before, basically legal general counsel, it's like you review contracts and that's about it. But now you basically have to become like a business enabler. And obviously, the key change now has been the increasing use of technology.
Yeah.
Like before, like years ago, I mean, we're drafting agreements, getting them executed hard copies. Now, with the exception of certain agreements, everything is like in my field, everything is done online. So I can be anywhere in the world. I can review agreements. I can witness or sign them anywhere in the world. So it's made contracts execution faster. But also with it, like I said, with the technology tool that has come, especially now with the explosion of AI. I mean, the funny thing is that AI it's not new. It's been around for quite a long time, but the last 2, 3 years, it's just exploded. Everywhere you go, everyone is talking about AI. We're using AI in this, we're using AI in that. And obviously every day it's a new learning experience. So again, last I mentioned previously, you always have to keep on top of the game. And now being like a general counsel, you have to be globally aware of what's going on around you. Because you cannot sit in you cannot just even focus on your sector. You have to look at what's going on across other sectors across the world to obviously be able to advise, because now everyone and anyone can go on the internet and find information. So because of that, you always have to be very up to date. Because everything is also available online, generally everyone also kind of thinks they know what to do. I mean, it's even when you go to the doctor, if you think about it. You go to the doctor, and before you've gone to the doctor, you've already done your own Google search to find out. Yeah, so then when the doctor is prescribing, you're also giving, well, Google says this or that, and they can also tell that you've been on Google. So I think that's where, so it's also that thing that everyone is a pocket lawyer now. Everyone also expects that just because there's technology now, everything should be done quicker. So I think those are the ways that the role has changed from before. And like I said, ultimately, I think now as a general counsel, you have to be more commercially astute.
Yes.
You should be able to read like a financial statement and understand it. So that when you're discussing a business plan, you should also be able to understand how you contribute to that. I think being a general counsel now is definitely more strategic, but you also have to deal more with things like budget and managing expenses. Whereas before, a lot of those things, you could just maybe leave it to the financial team.
Yeah.
So I think that is how the role has evolved. Basically, now you have to basically know a bit of everything. Your field is obviously advising the business on legal risk and managing those risks, but you also have to basically know the business inside out, or else you will not be able to succeed.
Great.
Thank
you. You used a term, business enabler. It's such a simple but beautiful expression to describe what General Counsel is today. I really like a business enabler. Abena, the next question is yours. So General Counsel are fond of using the phrase protecting the business. What does protecting the business really mean in your day-to-day work?
Thank you, David. So people often assume protecting the business means preparing for or blocking lawsuits. In reality, I see it as making sure today's decisions do not undermine tomorrow's operating environment. So from the energy industry perspective, that starts from preserving the integrity of the petroleum agreements you're working under. It means ensuring stabilization clauses, fiscal terms, cost recovery mechanisms, development obligations are all quietly, respected, but then also are not eroded by regulatory actions or informal administrative shifts, because that could also end up hurting the business. So on a typical day, protection involves reviewing an operational decision and asking whether it inadvertently creates regulatory exposure under Act 919. So Act 919 is actually the law we work under, the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act of 2016. So that's what we work under. So normally your operational decisions must sit within the law. And you must also assess whether that decision triggers a compliance issue with the Petroleum Commission, who is the upstream regulator. It also involves engaging your sector ministry early on an issue before it gets critical, not because there's a dispute, but to prevent one. This also means, advising management on whether a particular course of action is legally arguable, the reputational or sovereign consequences that may come with it, and any short-term gain you may have from such a decision. So it entails a lot of things. Protecting the business is also deciding when to escalate a disagreement formally and when to resolve it commercially to preserve the long-term state alignment. So it involves risk assessment before capital is deployed, because once billions are committed to infrastructure, leverage shifts, and you know that this business is capital intensive. So it's very important to assess the risk first. So in simple terms, I'll say protecting the business is less about winning arguments and more about preserving strategic positioning over time. And it must all be done within the legal framework that exists in the business. Yes.
Thank you. At least I understand protecting the business now. When I'm looking for work from you and you start telling me you need to protect the business, I know it's not about getting injunctions straight away and all. Nana Kofi, back to you. And this next question is about balance. So in a fast-moving and innovation-driven sector like telecoms and even digital finance, how do you balance commercial pressure with the legal caution that your training as a lawyer binds you to?
So I think it comes on again to a previous statement about being a business enabler. So basically, like in what we do is, or what my team we do is, basically you should see yourself as a business partner to whatever department. So let's say it's finance, it's marketing, it's network, it's IT. So the way I look at it is, obviously there's always commercial pressure, like to get things out as quickly as possible. And generally what tends to happen is legal will come in at the end. So obviously when you start asking the questions, then it's like you are delaying the process. So the way I approach this is, attend, you attend the department meetings of other departments. So even just sitting in there, basically
Yes.
just sitting in those meetings, you know what's coming like down the road. Sometimes they are discussing things that because they are just looking at it from the revenue point of view, they may not have thought about certain things. So just attending such meetings, you can just pick up on certain things and tell them, oh no, but look, if we do it this way, we are going to run foul of this law, or we are going to run foul of this law. So this is what we need to do. Sometimes you have to actually, because that's not their field, they haven't thought of certain things you have to do. For example, in our field, a lot of things, because we've been declared like dominant, we can't do a lot of things without regulatory approval.
Yeah.
So maybe marketing will say we are bringing out this new product in a month. We know that you have to go for approval. That can take about a month by itself. But by being part of the process from the beginning, then that extra month is factored into the plans to roll out. So and that's what I say. This is where it comes down to just being in touch with the business. Even if it's not going for regular their meetings, just when you see someone, just ask them, what are you doing? What's new in your department? And that's just how you're going to pick up things that are coming up. Also, generally what happens is when there's projects, is the commercial teams, IT are involved because they have to, configure the things. But legal only is seen as for the contracts part of things. And I think there's this one thing I always say to anyone. I was like, if it's a visa application or a passport form, everyone reads every single detail, including the small print. So the same way when it comes to legal agreements, you shouldn't just think it's just a document that has to just go out. Because sometimes the reality is we need information from you as well. Because I will understand the legal clauses, but because the user department is the one actually operationalizing it, there are certain things that may not have been put in the contract. But just by speaking to them, you can find out these things, and then you find a way to factor it into the agreement. So I think that's basically what it is with me. Be curious, always try to be available, and that's how you merge the two. So that by the time you actually have to do you've already dealt with all the risk issues, and then ideally it should just be smooth sailing getting the agreements out.
Hey, being a GC sounds both daunting and fascinating at the same time. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So, Abena, back to you. In a capital-intensive industry like energy, how do you decide when to say yes or no to a risk or to risk generally?
Thank you, David. So usually for us, compliance and finance team would do the assessments of the risk, but of course they will speak to legal first. It's a teamwork. So for my part, the question is rarely whether a risk exists, because it always does. The real question for us is whether the risk is understood or worth the upside. So for me, saying yes or no occurs within the framework of standards and principles. So first, I look at what the risk touches. If it threatens license tenure or fiscal stability, the bar is high. Those are structural pillars. So if they are compromised, the entire asset can be destabilized. That is where no becomes more likely. I also assess whether the risk is controllable. Can it be ring-fenced in the contract? Can exposure be capped? Is there insurance? Can the decision be phased so we are not overcommitted on day one? If there's a credible mitigation pathway, then I would go for yes. I've also come to understand that concessions must be formalized or put in writing. So in this industry, nothing dies at the end of a meeting. So you can concede or agree to something in a very specific context. Perhaps there was urgency, a financing constraint, a political sensitivity, or a temporary operational bottleneck. So the concession makes sense in that particular moment. Then 6 months down the line, you're back at the same negotiation table, and someone says very calmly, but you agreed to X the last time, and on that basis, you should do Y. The context that justified X has disappeared. The commercial pressure is different. The risk profile is different, but the concession is now being treated as a new baseline. So what looked like a one-off accommodation quietly mitigates into expectation, and then it becomes precedent. And before you realize, your contractual or fiscal framework has shifted without a formal amendment ever being signed. So when I assess risk, I'm not only asking, can we live with this today? I'm also asking if this is repeated across assets, across the years, across negotiations, what does it do to the portfolio? So if accepting a risk creates a template that weakens future negotiating positions and erodes stability protections or alters commercial balance beyond the specific deal in front of us, then that is a red flag. So my assessment comes with a lot of analysis. And of course, as I said, you would always do it with the compliance or finance team. So this is how I would normally go about it. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nana Kofi, back to you. I wasn't going to let you go away without asking you a question about AI. I know you've talked about AI, but I'll still ask my question. How is technology, specifically AI, automation, and related compliance tools changing your role as GC? You can tell us one major way in which AI has changed or complemented your role.
Thanks, David. So in terms of AI, I think there's this, well, obviously, it starts off with AI is going to replace lawyers. So there's that conception out, and there's also this idea now that because of AI, everything should be done quicker. But obviously, we all know that AI only puts out what you put in. So if you put in garbage in inverted commas, then that's what you're going to produce. So yes, AI has helped in that you can just put a document into a tool like Gemini, for example, and it will do a summary for you. But it doesn't mean that summary is accurate because it's only going to also put out what has been put in. So there's also that side of things. So definitely it has helped in terms of the speed with which we work. But again, there's also the risk that you might be getting out wrong information as well.
Yes.
So there's still that balance. And obviously, because there's still, well, everyone is still trying to develop the whole AI ecosystem and what laws should govern it. Because even in Ghana here, we hear there's a draft AI policy, and it's like, okay, but where is it coming from? Even in the AU, even under the AU framework, there's also AI framework, African Free Trade Continental. Everyone is talking about AI, but it's just trying to put everything together. So I think that's just one thing. It's almost like trial and error. We are going along, trial and error, and obviously at some point we should have a good sense of what exactly AI can do and what it can do. Obviously, there's all this stuff about there's AI, but there's also responsible AI. So that's also something like from our side of things we are looking at. It's not just using AI, but AI has to be used responsibly. And obviously, with all this new technology of AI, there's also the increasing risk of cybersecurity threats. And I think you see it more and more now. It's happening everywhere. Deep fakes, etc. So there's also that part of things that we have to look at. So I think that's how AI has changed things for us. In terms of automation, I think the big one is probably contract management, where in theory, you should be able to do everything quicker and online, and then you don't necessarily have to use paper and hard copies. Obviously, it helps with ESG if you are in the field of ESG and you're trying to protect the environment and all of that. So that's also how it's helped in the field. Thank you.
Interesting. You're welcome. So, Abena, my last but one question to you, I think, is if you could give one piece of advice to new GCs navigating today's environment, what would it be?
Thank you, David. So if I had to give one piece of advice to a new GC, it would be this: understand or perhaps master the commercial aspects of your business. I would presume you already know your law, so master the commercial aspects as well. So early in my career, I thought technically being right was enough. So I would walk into meetings armed with the clause, the statutes, the precedents. And that's absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I noticed something. The conversation would move on without me. Management would not be debating the law or what is said. They are rather debating whether to invest, whether to push, whether to absorb a hit now to secure value later. That was a turning point for me. They want you to assist them to achieve the goal without flouting the law. Don't just come quoting the law. So at the executive level, no one needs a lecture on what is prohibited. They need help deciding what is tolerable. For example, imagine a situation where a regulator takes a position that is arguably inconsistent with the petroleum agreements you're working under. The pure legal answer might be, no, we will challenge it. But the question you should ask yourself, so what if that challenge delays a critical approval or strains a long-term government relationship? The better answer may be, yes, we accept this narrow position, but we will document our reservation and preserve the broader framework. So that is not legal theory, that is judgment. So another example, a commercial team wants to accelerate a project that carries regulatory exposure. A new GC might say, well, that's too risky. But a commercially fluent GC would say, well, here is a downside if it fails. Here is how we will ring fence this contractually. Here is the risk profile, and here is my recommendation. So same risk, different influence. I have found that being solution-oriented goes a long way. You can become indispensable because management trusts not just your legal knowledge, but your judgment as well. And that's the real deal. So that's the kind of advice I give a new GC.
Thanks, Abena. And Kofi, this is my last question to you, and it's probably my most important question to you. What makes a general counsel truly valuable to a CEO and the wider executive team?
Thanks. So it sounds obvious, but it's sometimes difficult for lawyers to do, and it's to be concise. Less is more. Because generally, with lawyers, you go into a meeting, the law says this is what this is, and you have execs looking at you like, what are you saying? Can we do this or not? So I think the key thing is to be concise. Less is more. I think another thing I would say is you should always give options rather than just give answers. So maybe you go, you're explaining something, you just tell them this is the risk, but you're not giving a solution. And I think, as Abena mentioned, you have to be solution oriented. So don't come and tell me we can't do this. How do we do it and do it within the confines of the law? So I think that's also something that you have to bear in mind. And I think it's always good to anticipate questions before they are asked, so that you're not caught unawares.
Yeah.
Whenever you're going into a meeting or with execs, whatever, that obviously you should generally know what the meeting is about. And then the best way is you prepare to be, I guess, play devil's advocate. So you just think, what are some of the questions that could come up and how do I answer them? Because ultimately, they want answers. They want to be told they can do this. They are not interested in, we cannot do this because the law says that. Because then sometimes you get, well, this other person or this other company does it. So how come we can't do it? So I think that's also something to do. And I think, which we don't do so well sometimes, is we have to be decisive. Because I think one of the things you mentioned about being a lawyer is when there's an issue, then they need a legal opinion. And it's like everyone wants to use what the general counsel says to make the decision. So if something goes wrong, it's like, well, you advised us to do this. And obviously, in that situation, no one, because the reality is the law is the law. I can sit here and tell you this is what the law says. It doesn't mean when we go to court, the judge is going to agree. It doesn't mean when you go to the regulator, they are going to agree, because they also have their own interpretation of it. So I think this is where it comes down to, you give an opinion. I mean, you should make a decision, because they don't want to have option A or option B. I think even sometimes when we as general counsel go for external legal opinions, we will ask, what is the probability of success? And everyone is very careful about, putting something very firm, because it's ultimately you're not the one making the decision. So I think this is also another way that you can be, you can make yourself very valuable to the business. And I think ultimately it comes back to being inquisitive. Don't just go and see the execs when there's an issue, when there's a legal issue. Even things that are not necessarily your field of expertise, you try to get involved. so that they also realize that, oh, you are there as a legal counsel, but you actually have an interest in the business as a whole. So I think once you build that rapport, and like I said, stakeholder management, it makes it easier to be valuable. And obviously, I always say the best way you are doing your job well is when you keep. I mean, sometimes you can't get a bit much, but when your execs always want you in meetings with them, like that's they value your advice when they send you messages, and sometimes even then they start even coming to you about personal legal issues. So because they know that you can give sound advice, and they know that you give. There's this phrase everywhere used, be agile, because as much as they want advice, everyone wants advice quickly. So I think that is basically what it comes down to. When the execs reach out to you,
yes,
as often as possible, and then you know that you are doing something right, and they always want you to be part of discussions. So I think those are basically some of the things that I would say are good. It makes you truly valuable. I mean, obviously the rest goes without saying, that make sure they don't get into trouble. But those are I think it's the soft skills that matter a lot more.
Understood. Thank you for that. And Abena, my last question to you is on something I'm really passionate about, mentorship. And I mentor many young lawyers and law students. And I'm finding out that maybe even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, many young lawyers or law students would aspire to eventually become partners of a leading law firm. But now people are aspiring to become GC. So for young lawyers who aspire to become GC, what should they be doing, or what should they be doing differently now? Perhaps you can give a couple of things or examples.
Yeah, sure. So I'm speaking from the upstream energy perspective. I'll say first, build your commercial debt early. So do not remain a pure legal technician. Understand how the assets makes money. So when I talk about assets, I mean the oil block you're working on. Understand how it works. Sit in commercial negotiations. Understand their perspectives. Read project models or review them. If you don't understand, let the technical team help you. Let them break them down so you can understand and appreciate the technical issues better. And you should also be able to link the legal position to the economic impact. So that's very important. And then secondly, and this is a difficult one, I would say you should learn to advise when the information you have is incomplete or scanty, because that's the reality you will face. You can have a team walk into your office and ask you for a legal opinion on an issue, and they themselves don't have the full facts. And here it's urgent and the stakes are high. You have to find a way to maneuver out of that. And as Nana Kofi said, they will quote you and say it was legal advice. So you would have to be strategic. Yes, you have to be strategic here. You have to give a temporary solution while you wait for the full picture. And then, like you said, mentorship is important. Have a mentor. So if you want to go into telecommunications, you want to go to oil and gas, whatever industry you want to go into, get a mentor. And I'll say read a lot as well. I have made mistakes when I started with my career in oil and gas. I did downstream and then moved into upstream. And I remember when I moved into upstream, I was being a bit, I felt like, well, I worked with Total for a number of years. That's downstream. What didn't I see? What's new under the sun? So when I started upstream, I thought I knew everything. And I remember having to review a letter, and I saw a Christmas tree in there somewhere, and I canceled it out because it was around Christmas time, and I assumed the person had made a mistake, only for me to later realize that that's actually one of the assembly of valves that is used in production of oil and gas. It's one of the items they use. And I found it so weird because I didn't think that should be a term in oil and gas that people should know about. So I just canceled it. I didn't ask about it. I didn't even Google the term to see. It was too obvious that it's Christmas time and the person has made a mistake. So I had to learn in a very humble way. And since then, whatever I see, I just check it out first, because I noticed that there are certain terms that I use in this business that may look like it's a mistake, but is actually a well-known terminology in the upstream business. So humility, learn, read, have a mentor, be ready to face the pressure, and you're good to go. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, listeners, as we've heard today, the role of a general counsel goes far beyond drafting contracts or interpreting regulations. It's about judgment, about leadership, and often it's about having the courage to guide an organization through uncertainty with clarity and integrity. What stands out is that the most effective GCs are not simply legal experts. They are business partners. They understand risk, strategy, people, and timing. They know when to advise caution and when to support bold decisions. The Legal 500 GC Power List rightly recognizes this caliber of leadership. Abena and Nana Kofi, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And thank you, more importantly, for sharing your insights and for the example you are setting for the next generation of lawyers, GCs, and business leaders in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
too
having
for
us.
having us.